Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video from Inside Wire. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you two NAS Synology disk stations. Along with that, we're going to be installing 12 1TB SSD drives, and also we're going to be installing 4 1TB NVMe drives. I'm going to be unboxing these and going through the setup and configuring them as a highly available pair. Before we get started, please do remember to hit the like button if you find this video useful, and to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to be notified when I release more content. Now, there's so many things you can do on the Synology disk stations. Stick around towards the end where I have a look at some of the software that's available on the DSM, and in part 2 we'll have a look at how to configure them and get them set up. Anyway, that's enough of me talking. Now let's get these two unboxed and set up. So let's start by looking at the box itself. We have the top, if we have a look at this side, so high performance NAS, 4-core CPU. It supports the M2 NVMe drive as system cache, so we have a couple of those to install in this. It comes with a 10GB Ethernet port, one of those, and two 1GB Ethernet ports, expandable storage and RAM, and it's got some data protection by BTRFS. So I don't think there's anything on the sides, but we just have a look at the back here. So as I mentioned, so on the back it says what the model number is, what it is, and probably just some of the bits that I just listed a couple of seconds ago. So what the compatible drive types are, so it takes 6 3.5 inch or 2.5 inch drives, and then it takes 2 NVMe SSDs as well. External ports, you have USB 3, so USB 3x3, 2 eSATAs, 1 gigabit Ethernet, which there's 2 of those, and then 1 10GB Ethernet. Size, warranty, and what the package contents are. So you have the main unit, power cord, accessory pack, RJ45 LAN cable, and a quick installation guide. So let's flip this back over to the top and let's open this up. So right here at the top we have some package contents, which has the 2 Ethernet network cables. Pop them to the side. We have some screws for our drives themselves. So we're going to need these when we come to install them very shortly. And we have a power cable, so that's also in there as well. We also have a set of keys in here, which we will find out very shortly what they are for. Here's a quick installation guide in here, so I'm guessing it's going to take you through how to install this. So yep. So we have taking out your drives, unclipping them, placing your drives in, what to do in the 2.5, popping it back in, and then plugging it in and power it on. And there we go, that's the unit itself. So looking at the front of the unit, these are the drives that are in here. So it's exactly what it was talking about earlier. You pull these out, I'll have a little look at that shortly, but you would install your drives in here and then pop them back in. And I'm guessing this is also probably what this key was for, to lock these drives, to stop it opening. So yeah, you can see if you lock those, your drives don't come out and then you can open them. So have a little USB 3 on the front here. Just pop it on the back. Just flipping this over, you can see we've got the power here, another bit of physical security. We have an expansion slot here, a couple of eSATA drives. These are your 2 1GB LANs, and it does specify on here, it does say 10 gigabit Ethernet on here. I'll bring that a bit closer. You can see it says 10 gig on there. And then you have your 2 additional USBs as well. So I think let's go ahead and install the drives first. So just to take a look at what we're going to install, I'm just going to pop these on the side. So we have some SSDs to install and we have the NVMe drives. So first thing I'm going to do is actually pop out all the drives. And the reason I'm going to do that is because the actual NVMe slots are inside. There's no external access to it. It's all done from the inside. So there's probably a slightly easier way of doing this, which is to take out probably the first front 2 drives, but I'm taking them all out so I can actually show you where these sit, and they sit right here, 1 and 2. So we'll go ahead and get those installed first. So just quickly pop this down. This is the NVMe drive that's going to be installed. I'm actually going to try and flip this on its side so I can show you how I'm installing this. I'm going to try and do this one-handed. I don't know if this is going to work. There we go, so just pop that in, and that clips straight in there. So that's one, and that is the second. So let's just pop this again on its side so you can see what I'm doing. So we'll go ahead and install these. So these are 1 terabyte in size. And they're the WD Reds SA500. So we're going to go ahead and install these. Okay, so we'll take the first one now. Because the drive is not as big as this, we're going to be installing it here. So I'm actually going to get the pack of screws that we had earlier. So I'm going to pop this out of the way, and I'm going to go ahead and install all of these one by one. Right, now we have all of the disks installed. Let's bring our NAS back. So simply to install these, you take your drive back and you just pop it in, and you'll feel it go there. We need to do exactly the same with the other one. So if you do have a second one, you can re-watch this same part, or just continue and do the same with the next one. Once the second one is completed, we can go ahead and power these up. So we can pop the power cable in onto here. So we'll put the power cable in here and then get yourself connected. If you've got a 10 gig slot, use 10 gig. If you've got a gig, you can use a gig. So now that we've unboxed, I've gone ahead and powered up both the Synology NASs and also plugged them into the network. So what we're going to have a quick look at first is what static IP they've been given. Synology does give another way where you can type in, I believe it's Synology NAS, into the web browser, and it will go ahead and find that on the network. However, because I've plugged 2 into the network, I'm not quite sure how that's going to react, so I'm just going to go ahead and find the manual IPs for this. Let's click on network, and then we go to, not sure what happened there, then we go to clients, and if we scroll down to the bottom, we will see the 2 Synology NASs. So 10.1.1.95 and 10.1.1.149. So let's start with 10.1.1.95, start there. And we can see that one is plugged into port 9 and this one into port 10. Okay, so let's also open up the second one. So 10.1.1.149. Okay, so we can see welcome, setup. We know what it is. The device info is there. It's giving us the IP address. So we click setup. And then it's saying install disk manager DSM. So DSM is the operating system that runs on the Synology NAS. We'll go into that and have a look at the interface very shortly. So let's click install. All the data on hard drive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 will be removed during installation. That's fine. They're completely blank drives anyway, so let's go ahead and do that. So this takes approximately 10 minutes. So I think to do that, I'm just going to do both at the same time just to make it a little bit quicker. So we'll go to the second one, we'll click install, and we understand, and we'll let them run simultaneously. So I don't actually have a quick connect account, so I'm just going to skip this step down here. Yeah, that's fine. I don't need to remote access it at the moment. I don't want to do... Okay, this is basically setting up your network device to allow it to be located via find.synology.com, so it's kind of like tracking if you want to set that up, or you don't have to tick it and click go. So remind me later, and let's just do the same with the other one for now. So okay, so then it just shows you the tips that are all on here, so we just go through, and this is the interface itself. So it's I think it's a really nice graphical user interface they've got here. It's very simple. On the right hand side down at the bottom you've got the resource monitor, what the IP address is, what the uptime is, and the health state. Let's have a little look. So there's a search if you want to. Okay, so that's the widget, some options, and any notifications you have. So on the left hand side you've got DSM help, file station, control panel, and package center. So looking at the main menu here, you've got a few other things along here: security advisor, support center, iSCSI manager, and an OAuth service. So I'm going to start by going to control panel, go to info center, and let's have a little look at what information is down here. So it gives you everything about this itself, what the network is, storage, so what's all in here, what the temperatures are, service, what services are enabled, device analytics, and your Synology account. Play around with the network settings. So what we did is we called it NAS 1. We have our DHCP server set up, or DNS server, sorry. So network interface, and we click edit, and we actually want to give it a manual configuration. So I'm actually going to give this 10.1.1.15. That's all okay. If you've got a VLAN for it, if you want to set it up on a specific VLAN, you can here. And if you are using a 10 gig, you would probably want to change your MTU as well to allow 10 gig to go through. So that's being applied now. So I'm just going to go across the same and do the same over here. So info center, network, sorry, let's go to network interface, LAN, edit, use manual, and we're going to give this a .16 address. Same again, VLAN if you want it set up on a specific VLAN, but just for now I'm going to set it up here and let that go off and apply, and this is automatically changed to the new IP address. So let's just now that we've got the network set up, let's just run through the control panel itself from the top. So you've got shared folders, so you can create one straight here. File services, so SMB is enabled, or if you want it to be across the domain. You've got how you would find it on each. AFP service is enabled, so that's within Mac OS X, or OS 10 should I say, and if you want to enable NFS. Also you have FTP settings, TFTP settings, rsync, and advanced. In advanced there seems to be a few other configurations that you can set up. Users, so you can actually have a specific user, so if you're not linked to a domain you can set up a specific user here. You've got groups, and again if you want to connect it to a domain you can do just here. So then we have connectivity. So this is the quick connect account that I didn't enable earlier, so if you want to enable it you can update it here. External access, so there's no external access at the moment. If you don't want to use quick connect and you have your own dynamic DNS that you want to set up, you can just here. And I don't think there's anything else. You've got your network settings, DHCP settings if you want to set it up as a DHCP server, and your security settings. So on here you've got various different security settings. If you want to enable a firewall, so you can set up your protection for denial of service on your LAN connection, auto blocking of your account, the default certificate that Synology uses for authentication. So this is a self-signed one. If you want to create a one that you've got from a public provider, you can also do that, and anything in the advanced settings as well. So there is a lot that goes on in these systems. Regional options, so you can change how you want it set up. So I'd actually prefer day, month, year, and we can apply that here. If you have an NTP server, so currently it's synchronizing with Google, but if you have a specific one on your network. Notifications, you can enable notification service, so SMS, push service, or advanced, depending on what you want it to set up. So if you want it to tell you when it's down, or something's blocked, or hard drives filling up, etc., etc., this can actually alert you for that automatically. Task scheduler, you can create scheduled and triggered tasks, hardware and power. So if you wanted to set the enable wake up on LAN, that's an option you can have here. So the DSM software, there will be new updates from time to time, so just make sure you are up to date. And then you look at applications, so privileges. Within the applications themselves, this is what comes in out of the box. Application portal, indexing service, shared sync folder, and terminal and SNMP. So you can use terminal to log into this and enable it, and also you can enable SNMP to manage this device. So if you don't want to use the notifications that are built in here, you can use the SNMP service as well. So, and you can download the MIB files straight from Synology's website. So that's the control panel. If we go into the package center, I will go into this a little bit more in detail a little bit later, but we want to set up the high availability. So we need to install this from the package center, so we'll get that one installed. And I'm going to do the same on the other side as well. So I'm going to go to package center. It'll ask you to accept the terms and conditions. So we click agree, and then we want to go to high. So we want to install the highly available there as well. So let's open the Synology high availability. So this is where it talks about the cluster. So I actually have two of these. So what makes this great is not only do you have redundancy in disks, if one fails, you also have redundancy in the cluster itself. So if one NAS box completely fails, power supply goes or whatever, you have the second one that takes over. So this would be what we call an active passive setup. So one remains active while the other remains passive, and then once the active one dies, the passive one takes over. So the way you would set this up, you would connect into your switch, which is what we've done at the moment, and we would set a connection between the two for the heartbeat. So let's click create highly available cluster. So it says before you start, make sure you've got two compatible ones, make sure the following have identical configurations: storage, network, DSM version. Make sure both hosts are assigned at least one static IP address, which is fine, and make sure you set up the heartbeat connection to enable internal communication between the two hosts. Make sure the host names are different on both, which we have NAS1 and NAS2, and then we can click next. So for the cluster interface, we're going to choose LAN 1 because that's what's connected at the moment, and LAN 2 I've connected between the active and passive. So let's click next. So let's enter the username and password of the number 2. So let's click next. So let's give the cluster a host name. So let's just call it cluster or NAS cluster. And let's give it an IP address of 17. So we click next. And now it's going to go off and just verify the requirements. So I know within my network, anything lower than 50 is not in the DHCP range, so I can comfortably set the static IP to that. If you do have everything in the DHCP range, you might want to make sure it doesn't go and get allocated to something else. Excellent, so it says we've met all the requirements for creating a highly available cluster. We click next. So at the time, depending on the size of your volumes, raising existing, including data on them will accelerate the cluster. Yeah, so we've got nothing on there, so we can erase all the data and click next. Again, it just wants you to know and you understand that everything is going to be removed. So these are the settings for this one. So the heartbeat is on LAN 2, passive server is NAS 2, the cluster name is NAS cluster, LAN 1, the IP address of the cluster, and remove all data. So we click apply. The system will start creating the highly available cluster. So it's just basically saying that all the services are going to stop and it's going to resume once the cluster has been set up. So we'll let that one continue and we'll click yes. So it's going to go off and do that. After that's set up, you can see that the NAS is all set up. We have the two IPs and the cluster IP, which is good. So I'm just going to have a quick look over this interface. So showing the connection is healthy, what the latency is, the utilization across the both, the hosts themselves, so active and passive. We can see everything is healthy on them. The network, so you can change some of the bits around. So if you want to configure something else, for example, you can do. And these are the hosts themselves, so services. So these are the services you want to set up off this. So if we want an iSCSI target, FTP, AFP, NFS, and web services. So if you want to enable the quorum server, you can do, and you can give it an IP address to, basically it acts as a server that determines when to do the active passive failover. But we won't set this up for now. We'll go to storage. So let's just save because we've applied all of that. So then we go to storage. We can see these are all here in terms of that. And then the logs. So now instead of making any changes across both NASs, you would literally just create it in one. So now we're going to go and set up the storage pools. So let's go to Storage Manager, and firstly you would create a storage pool and then you would create different volumes depending on what you want to set up. So I'm going to go with storage pools. There's two different options, better performance or higher flexibility. The better performance will probably be the one that I pick at the moment. The flexibility allows you to use Synology's hybrid RAID, which gives you greater flexibility in terms of the volumes. But for now, I know I've got all 12 drives as the same, so we can go ahead and do this for better performance. So you can give it a storage pool description, which is fine. We're going to go with RAID 5. So the minimum number of drives you need for RAID 5 is 3, and the maximum number of drives is 24. So just a note on the side, RAID 5 can actually sustain a loss of a single drive. So not only have we got the active passive failover, if one drive does go on one of the NAS drives, you can continue working. Then we add in all the drives themselves into the storage pool. Basically saying this isn't listed on the Synology compatibility side, but I'm not too bothered about that one. We'll click continue, click next. We add all the drives, so we're going to get about 4.53 terabytes out of the 6 terabytes of usable data. So we click apply. So we'll just let this finish creating. So there we go. So it's verifying the disk consistency in the background. So that's going to go off and do that. It will now give us the option to create volumes. So you can create as many volumes as you need. We're going to go with BTRFS just because we want to look at replication and folder snapshots. So we click next. We're going to create one volume at the moment with all the drive, or with the 4.5 terabytes in there. So we click apply. If you wanted to split it out, I did say you can create multiple volumes, which you can. So if you wanted to create more, you can do. Okay, so that's the storage manager. So now we go over to control panel and we look at shared folders. So this is where we start creating. So for the first one, I'm going to call it ISOs, for example, because we want the ISOs in there. We click next. We can encrypt it if we want to. We want to enable data checksum for advanced data integrity, if you want to enable file compression, and if you want to enable a quota. So I'm going to give this 100 gig because I don't want it anything more on there. So it does say down here, to ensure quality, service quality, we recommend not enabling data checksum when the shared folder is being used for the following services. So for any files and folders, you can enable that, but when you're hosting databases or virtual machines or video recordings, it says not to enable it. So that one's fine there, so we'll go with that one. Read write for admin. We'll create another one, say for example for VMs. This one we'll click next. We don't want to encrypt the folder, we don't want to enable this, and we're going to give this one 1000 gig. We'll click next, click apply. Again, read write access for this. And we're just going to have one that's just called files. So click next, encrypt this folder, next, enable this on this, and we want to give this a quota of 150 gig maybe for now. And we click apply. There we go. So that's our 3 folders set up that we wanted. Just a side note, if ever you want to edit the size that you've allocated, you can do that there, and it shows you how much is used of that at the moment. So I'm just going to go across to the Finder, and we're going to click go, and we're going to go to network. Just put that across here. You can see we have these set up here, and we want to go to the NAS cluster. So we want to connect as, click connect. Don't want to connect as me, we want to go to admin and then type in the password for admin. And there you go, you can see these 3 folders. And they are exactly what they say, so you can actually just drag and drop stuff into these folders. So we'll click close on that one and we'll go back across. So for file services, you can see down here, if you want to go to NAS cluster or SMB, you can go down here. If you want our Apple file services, which is that one, then you can do that through the Mac Finder. And if you want to enable NFS, which we do. So there's also FTP, if you want to enable FTP, TFTP, rsync, click advanced. And then it shows you file fast clone, Bonjour service, SSDP, and WS discovery. That is how you set up your highly available cluster, along with setting up some file shares. One thing I am going to look at just before I conclude this video is the package center. So I did say at the start that the Synology NAS has loads of things that can be done with it. Let's have a little look down here on the screen and have a look at some of the stuff that you can do. So these are all the tools that you can actually add in. So there's the active backup. There's active backup for G Suite Office 365. There's some antivirus, audio stations. I'm not going to go through every single one, but you can host a DNS server on here. Hyper backup Vault. So you can have an iTunes server, OAuth server. So there's loads of different things you can do. There's a directory server for the Synology. We've already installed the the Synology High Availability. There is a Mail Plus server or even a mail server, Synology Office, video station, VPN server, and the other thing I will be probably looking at in the next video is the virtual machine manager. So a couple of things I'm probably going to look at in part 2 is the virtual machine manager. So we'll have a look at what this does. We will have a look at Docker. I know this is becoming bigger and bigger, so we will have a look at a Docker container. We will have a look at the backup. So we'll have a look at active backup for business, and there are multiple backup backup software on here, so we can have a look at some of the other ones as well. And finally, we'll have a look at Plex. I know a lot of people are very interested in the Plex media server, so we'll have a little look at that. And if there's anything else while we're installing the products, we'll have a look at them in part 2. I really hope you found this video useful and informative. Please do hit that subscribe button and join me in part 2, where we take a look at Synology's DSM software and install some of the components. Once again, all the products used in this video are in the description below. Please do feel free to check them out. They are linked to my Amazon affiliate, so it will help me if you do decide to use them. For now, this is Inside Wire, and I'll see you in the next one.